Obbies, one of Roblox's most well-known types of games, short for obstacle courses. These things have been around basically forever, since the very start of Roblox itself. You can pretty much always find your average Mega Easy Obby on the front page, but this really isn't the kind of game I want to look at today. I'm sure you've seen the occasional difficulty chart obby or Tower of whatever pop up on the front page every once in a while, especially if you were around a few years ago. And I know for sure if you've played Roblox in the past couple years, you've seen the absolute hit game Tower of Hell on the front page. I'm sure you've noticed that these obbies are different from the usual Mega Easy Obby. I mean, who wouldn't notice the major shift between classic Roblox obbies and modern ones? For clarification from this point onwards, I'll just call older obbies, for example Mega Easy Obbies, classic obbies. The biggest thing about modern obbies is that they have such unique gameplay. They have twists and turns, specialized scripted objects, and a difficulty chart just to tell you how hard the obby will be. But the coolest part of all is that some of them come in the shape of an enormous imposing tower that you have to climb up. I'll explain what these things are in a little bit here. They're undoubtedly some of the most unique obbies Roblox has ever seen, but just where did they come from? Well, lucky for you, I actually have an exact answer for you, and it all starts with one individual, ObrenTune. ObrenTune is one of the developers of the game I mentioned earlier, Tower of Hell. In this game, you have to climb up a randomly generated obby inside of a circular tower within a certain time limit. The first person to get to the top can touch the win pad, which will then speed up the timer for everyone else. When the timer ends, the tower regenerates, and the process starts again. Nowadays, he's part of a game studio called Vulpine Digital, who works on games outside of Roblox, with their current project being a game called Tic Tac Loaded. I mention ObrenTune specifically because he's actually the single most important person for this video. Many would consider him to be the pioneer of modern obbies. Personally, I don't believe that this is enough though. He is quite literally the father of modern obbies, because if he never existed, obbies would be nothing like how they are now. His story begins long ago, back in the ye olden days of 2018, when he used to be called Kiddie Cannon. Back in 2018, Kiddie released a game called Kiddie's Towers of Hell, or JToH for short. Before I talk a little more, I want to explain two terms, towers and difficulty charts, as these are the most important aspects of both JToH and modern obbies as a whole. Towers are 10 floor tall obbies, with each floor being a 100 by 100 by 100 stud cube with 1 floor and 4 walls, hollow on the inside. Their purpose is for you to climb from the bottom to the very top by completing a difficult obby that elevates you as you complete it. Some of these obbies are extremely easy, and some of them are probably some of the toughest things you'll ever see in a video game. Further, these things are huge and easily take 10 plus minutes on average to beat nowadays, with some going up to literal hours to beat. Difficulty charts, on the other hand, are effectively a category system that tells you how hard a tower is. JToH standard 11 difficulties, those being easy, medium, hard, difficult, challenging, intense, remorseless, insane, extreme, terrifying, and catastrophic. Alright, with those out the way, we can now continue. JToH originally only had one tower, Tower of Hell. Sounds familiar, right? The entire point of this tower was meant to be a rage-inducing, never-before-seen monster that would get people mad, only for them to come back and try again later. When it was released, it was easily one of the hardest obbies in all of Roblox at this point. No one had ever seen this kind of obby before, and with all its specialized scripted objects, which he called client objects, it was a sight to behold. Nowadays, this tower is actually one of the easiest towers in the game, being most players' first major milestone to complete. JToH's history is a bit too long to get entirely into here, and I could honestly make a whole video on just the game's history alone, but I'll sum it up here. After Tower of Hell released, which he renamed to Tower of Heck because Roblox didn't take too kindly to the name at that point, JToH steadily grew, with Kiddie creating more and more towers, further expanding the JToH difficulty chart. Eventually, JToH's co-owner, Jupiter5, now named Juke, I think she wants it to be pronounced, sorry, took over. Nowadays, this game is called Juke's Towers of Hell, or JToH, and has literally hundreds of towers with an extremely active community. Further, JToH has added some new tower types. Citadels, which are extremely long towers with upwards of 25 floors, 2.5 times the original, and steeples, which are 5 to 6 floor towers. And the final one, neats, NEAT. They're short for Not Even a Tower. These guys are just tiny little mini towers. JToH now contains some of the most difficulty obbies Roblox has ever seen, including the Citadel of Void, which I'm sure you've heard of at some point, and some of the most decorated ones as well. This game has grown immensely into an amazing game under Juke and her team's watch. However, we aren't here to look at JToH. We're here to see where modern obbies came from, so let's get right back on track. If you haven't made the connection yet, KToH is the original tower game, and by extension, difficulty chart obby. It pioneered the tower obby style and created the modern standardized difficulty chart. But how did this kind of game grow so quickly? Well, I have two reasons. Let's start off with the first. It's just a completely novel type of obby. Or, well, at least it was, not really anymore. As I mentioned, back when KToH first released the Tower of Heck, no one had ever seen anything like this. An enormous imposing tower with a super difficult obby inside? It sounded interesting, and whether or not people wanted to actually beat the thing or not, it was so difficult that they simply had to check it out. I absolutely believe that the sheer novelty of this kind of creation was enough to garner attention at a time when Roblox wasn't as corporate as it is now. Obviously, novelty simply isn't enough to get a game popular anymore in the modern Roblox world, but it certainly was back in 2018. The second reason is that difficulty seems to be a major point of attraction for gamers. Just look at Geometry Dash. Geometry Dash is extremely difficult and simply just too tough for a lot of people to beat. But if you can practice enough, you'll eventually overcome these difficulties and find a new sense of pride in being able to complete something you know most humans will never be able to do. I would actually argue that the first reason, the novelty, is just a driving force for getting KToH seen by lots of people. But in reality, the difficulty is what kept people around. And it's what made the game addictive enough to be able to gather a community that would then expand into their own games, creating the monster that is the modern obby world. Now that we know the reason as to why modern obbies are the way they are, and also where they came from in the first place, let's talk about some of the games and people that helped really popularize this genre. I'll start with the games first, then go on to some of the YouTubers. Of course, we can't skip by Tower of Hell. This is easily the most popular tower game on Roblox right now. And as I mentioned, ObrenTune himself is one of the developers for this game. This game is constantly on the front page, serving as a reminder that the obby genre is still going strong. Other than this, a couple of games that are immediately brought to mind are Polly's Difficulty Chart Obby, Voidel Towers, and RNoir's Difficulty Chart Obby. Polly's Difficulty Chart Obby and Voidel Towers both released in mid-2020, with RNoir's Difficulty Chart Obby having been released in 2021. All three of these games have gathered a collective almost 30 million visits, and were some of the biggest games released within this genre. Polly's and RNoir's Difficulty Chart Obbies are the usual Difficulty Chart Obby games that you would see in the modern day, with checkpoints between stages that slowly increase in difficulty as the game goes on. Voidel Towers, on the other hand, is a tower game similar to JToH that lets players play any of the towers they have within the hub. These towers are more similar to the original KToH tower obbies with a modern touch to them. Overall, I'd argue that these three games are some of the biggest games out there that help popularize this genre to a greater number of players than we could have ever imagined. Other than games, some YouTubers who are worth mentioning are MathFactor360. MathFactor360 is a YouTuber who made videos on JToH back in the 2019 to 2020 time period, with some of his videos being able to reach over 1 million views, bringing attention to the game from people outside of Roblox as well. These two have millions of views combined on JToH, which undoubtedly helped bring tons of attention to this type of game. Obviously, they didn't bring attention to the genre itself necessarily, but the simple act of bringing attention to JToH was enough to get a community gathered around JToH, which was then able to expand and create even more fan games based on it, which, in accordance with internet law, exploded at an exponential rate, leading to the modernization of Roblox obbies as a whole. Roblox obbies have come quite a long way, from being nothing more than a couple of jumps and some occasional checkpoints to the monsters that they are today. Obbies truly have never been more popular or interesting than they are now, and we really do have ObrenTune to thank for that. This single individual was able to create something so novel and different that he was able to leave a lasting impact, not just on one of the largest gaming platforms in the modern day, but on the lives of so many people, myself included. It's truly something inspiring, isn't it? Knowing that a single individual can affect something so much that they change the course of its history for years and maybe even decades to come. Well, I guess you know what they say. Only shooting stars break the mold. Hey, thanks for sticking around this far. I've made some kinds of videos like this before, but they were all game reviews. I've always been intrigued in the video essay/documentary format, but I never really had a good topic to cover until now, so I just covered whatever game I felt like at the time. Still true today, but now I actually have something to cover. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please give the video a like. It absolutely helps with the algorithm, and I did work pretty hard on this video, so it would show me that my work was worth something in the end. Which, of course it is, but you know what I mean. Either way, thanks for watching. Now, go have a good day, get out of here.